should start now. Okay, now it's fine. Okay, hello everyone, welcome to today's session. The plan for, first of all, I finally changed my microphone, so I hope then you can hear me well now. So in case you have any issues hearing me, then please let me know. But I hope then it should be better than before. Okay, so the plan, I haven't checked yet. Thanks for your notes checks last week. I will check them this week. I haven't checked them yet, but I will definitely check them and let you know the results and also the correct answers. We will go through them this week as well, because this is a long week for us. Yeah, we'll have the session on Saturday as well, so we have pretty much time to discuss the things. And also this week we will start the project work, which will be the final assignment for this course. There will be pretty much things to do there, so I will go through all the details with you. So we'll just have like the common the common project, where you will be doing the tasks from your side, and I will also then go through all these tasks during the sessions, and at the end hope I'll get the right results. Also I will ask you again, that's maybe not a task for today, but for this week mostly, to split into two teams. So then I will just write in chat. Unfortunately there's 5 people, so it's hard to split into two teams. But if you have any ideas of splitting, then you can let me know until Wednesday. So if not, then it's fine. I will just simply randomly split you in 2 teams. And so then I'll put in the chat. So again, just if you have any ideas, if not, then it's fine. We'll just simply randomly split into 2 teams. And most likely on Wednesday it will be. I will also send the requirements for the project. So this will be pretty much, I'd say, large task. And you should also work in groups. You should apply basically the knowledge I would say all the key points we've gone through this course and also the previous course, and also the points from the project management. So you should also show the planning of your project. At the end, So as the last time, at the end you'll have the final presentation of your project. So there you should also present the way how your project was managed. So basically how you split tasks, how you track the progress, and so on. So basically in this case I recommend you use Jira, but in case you have any better solution like Microsoft Teams or something like that, you can also apply such tool, it's up to you. Yeah. But I think from my experience, Jira is maybe the best tool I used for this. But again, if you have any other tools, that's fine as well. So the usage of Jira or something like that. Also the usage of remote repository, how you use the remote repository, how you manage the delivering of the changes, how you solve the conflicts, how you split the tasks. Again, you can use the branches, as you know, and so about this was about the organization, and basically all the main features you learn from this course. And you maybe something additional, if you know, that's also fine. I will explain you on Wednesday in detail. So this will be like the main the web, let's say not large, but web project. So using web pages and so using database. So yeah, I will I will explain it on Wednesday when I just write the full description of the task. Yeah, but for two groups the task will be quite similar, and just some small details will be different, but in general the approaches to be used in two tasks will be they can be the same. Alright, so this is the plan for this week, and yeah, so before we move to project work, we have some pretty much additional topics to discuss. First of all, that's about Java language features. We already used lots of them, so some of the topics will be there as the reminders for you. The regular expressions and generics, but what I want to point your attention to a little bit is the functional programming. So I will also show you some quick examples. Also, I see that some of you also used functional programming in the yeah, okay, that's fine. If we will to the project with Alexander, that's fine. Okay, and then we already have the things. Yeah, so yeah, regarding the functional programming, I also see that some of you used this approach in the home tasks, so it's really good, and it basically this is the topic I would like to talk a little bit with you, so you can actually so you know that we have such things applied in Java, in newer Java versions, in latest Java versions. And yeah, then also we'll discuss about some design patterns, software design patterns, not only about Java, so you can also this will be about some specific terms, specific not features, but yeah, I think the pattern is pretty much right word for this. So basically, some maybe we can also name them the tricks, a little bit how tricks, the approaches, best practices we use in programming. Alright, so we can start, and yeah, so before we start, actually I noticed that some slides are not visible from this presentation, starting 27th slide. So if you want to see them, then I suggest you, yeah, as maybe you've already noticed, that these files have different formats, so that's not simple PowerPoint format, which is PPT, but in this case that's ODP, that's Open Document extension. So in case you want to fully read this presentation, you need to use another editor or not another program, or you can just simply go to so let's open file online opener. So you can open the file online, and you can choose any online viewer or editor. It's better to use viewer because for me I also face some issues with the editor. Yeah, so you can use one of the viewers, and I will show the one I used. Yeah, this one. So not this one, but I will not show you. Yeah, this is this one. So for this page it worked fine. So I will share with you. Yeah, in case maybe if you have some issues with old DP files in future, so you can use some other viewers. But for this viewer it worked fine for me. Okay, now so let's start. Again, some topics will be quite familiar with you. We already had some tasks with them, but so just if someone missed or maybe missed them or had some things which were not quite clear, then we can go through them. Yeah, so here we'll just go through Java versions starting at Java 5 and then see what are the features introduced. So again, as it works in Java, if something is introduced and it's not deprecated, then it will be available in newer versions as well. Yeah. So starting Java 5, we have generics. This is the topic we quite briefly gone through. So again, some small reminders to you about it, how the generics are constructed. Then has for each hooks that we also gone through, and enumerations. I think we didn't use enumeration quite much, but first is generic, and generics are also used in other programming languages, for example in C++. There's also such concept there. Yeah, basically the idea is to make the templates of types. So again, as you know, for generics we have the type which is not known well. So in this case we can use the definition. So that's the simple type which will be available for the whole class. So they can be different based on how we initialize them and how we use them. But the idea is that we have the generic type defined, and then it should belong to the method or to the object, and once we define the object or we call the method, then the type will be assigned, and then exactly this type will be used during the execution of the method, or just the usage of the object. Yeah, so as you remember, for the generics we used the brackets, comparison marks. so without generics, we don't really. Yeah. First of all, what are the advantages? We do not need to do the casting again. Just to remind you that under the generics we can only use the reference types. And as you also know, all the reference types are the objects, so they come from the class object, so they are inherited at some level from the class object, and in theory, instead of all the generics, we could use just simple object. So instead of integer, like in this case, we could just simply use the object, but like in this case, of course, no, it's runtime error, because we add something which is not integer. So in case we use just the object, then we definitely should use the casting. Remember, anytime you use the object as the class, so as the type, not as the class, but as the type. Okay. No, I mean, so that's what Nata was just shown. You can open it in PowerPoint, and as you can see, I also show in PowerPoint, but when you go to the slide 27, then at least for for your computer it may be different, but starting slide 27, I'm having the issues displaying it. Actually, I cannot really open the slide from here. So I use different programs. At first slides, for some reasons they work, but at some point it doesn't. For PowerPoint, from my experience, PowerPoint is maybe not the most stable program, especially when I remember some years ago when I studied at university. I also, since I studied in mathematics, so I had to write the formulas, and formulas look this way, so I had to type some equations, so I can type some equations, some fractions, for example, and so these equations are quite heavy for PowerPoint, and at the result, when I just wrote say 3 or 5 formulas, then after I wrote them, PowerPoint usually began to lagging a lot, and sometimes it was just freezing. That's why for PowerPoint it may have issues with some heavy files, but that's why sometimes you need to use other programs. But it depends. So again, the main idea is to escape using object, because again we can use object type everywhere to move to transport any reference types, because again we may have some interface, some abstract class or something like that, where we can just simply we use this class, and this class can just process lots of different types, maybe not just one type, but many types. So we have such class or interface, and the method, or the method and the methods, and so in this case we can use object as the type, so it's fine, it accepts all the types and everything's okay. But if we use object, then actually to cast it back, so imagine we have one class, we have another class which accepts, so we have one class which accepts some particular types of the class or method, and in this case it doesn't really matter, let's say class, I hope that's really fine. So we have one class which accepts specific type of the objects. Then we have general class which accepts all the objects, and then we have another class which accepts, let's say, different type of the objects, and they all use these two classes. They all use this general class. And at the end, so what you will see that to transfer the data from one place to another, or if you can just use one class, so you go from one class, you have specific type to general type, and then you go back. To go back, you definitely need to use the downcasting. So you go to the, so as you remember, we have this up to bottom hierarchy. So on top we have the superclass, then we go to the subclasses, and using the downcasting, we actually go down, we go to more specific type. And so if you use it in general, then as you know, you may have class exception. So to escape it, you can use try catch, or you can use the operator instance of, which actually checks if the type you are looking for is correct. Is basically what you want, what you expect. And in this case you can do the opposite. But again, so this is not safe because you may have something which will which will be not what you expect. Like in this case, you say that you expect integer to be retrieved from the collection, but let's say that you enter something which is not integer and which is not related to the integer, and in this case this is not what you expect, and you get runtime exception, which is basically class exception in this case. Comparing to the generics, so if you use generic types, it means that at the point you define which type will be used as the template instead of template type. At this point, you say to compiler what kind of type you expect, and it won't allow any other type to be used here. And in this case, your program will not be compiled until you provide the right type. So in this case, it's more safe, and it requires less validations. Because in this case, if we use usually when we use upcasting, we to actually choose the best practices to be safe. To safely use it, we should normally check and do the validation of the type. So it requires more lines of code to kind of try catch or operator instance of. So it takes more lines. Okay, so many tests. Okay, so I will split it into two slides. So actually, just do it this way. Instead, I do it this way. Then I'll just go back to the previous size. Alright, so as you remember, we can use only what can be generic. Generic can be the class. As you can see here, it can also be an interface. So we may have not just one generic type inside, but also multiple types defined. So each type will be, at this point we have the class, or when we have the interface. So it means that once we initialize the object, we create the object using this class or interface, then we should provide we can skip providing the type, but normally we should provide the type, and after that this basically at the point we provide the type, So you can imagine that these types will be replaced with the type you provide. So, and the same is for, as I said, for interface, for the class. Also, it can be used for the methods. Yeah. So for each method, you can provide some specific types, and then these types will be template types will be used, and they will be, most important, they will be checked before the program is compiled. Then as you remember, we have some naming conventions. Mostly you'll see T, which is type the element just used for the collection, the key. So like for the map, as you remember, we have key and v, which is key and value. And yeah, number, it's a little bit, it hasn't really rare usage, but can also be the number. The iterations, so as you remember, when we use the collections, we not almost, but in all the collections, we use the template types. And so using the template types, we just simply define what are the types of the elements in the collection. If this is the simple array list, then we define all the elements of the array list. All the lists that can be. If this is more complicated structure like map, so we have the key and the value, then we have two types. One is for the key and another is for the value. Also for the iterator, so as you remember, when we use iterator to go through the elements of the collection, and under the iterator also there is it's fine. For the iterator, we can also use the iterator this way. For the iterator, we provide the type to actually see what are the elements, what is the type of the elements we go through. So we can also define the subtypes of the type. We had the session where we gone through such structures, but the idea of such subtypes is quite simple. We restrict the type, which first of all we restrict the type, because by default if we have just simple T, it means that we consider we can write the logic only which can be used for all the objects. It means that we just basically inside the class where we have this template, when we have this template type, we can only write the logic which can be written for the object type. And in this case, we cannot call any specific methods. We can also only call such methods like toString, or it's basically something or class, something like that. Basically, only the methods defined in the object class. And so if we use the subtypes, so we can say it extends the class or it implements the interface. In this case, it means that this template now can be, first of all, the usage of it is restricted. That's first we will be sure that it will extend the specific type we provide, or it will implement a specific class we provide, or it will extend, or it extends. It will extend the specific class we provide, or it will implement the specific interface provided. So in this case, so if without the subtypes, we could only use the methods and the attributes defined in the object class. So using extends and implements, we can actually use the methods and the attributes defined in these So in this case, in this class, which will be typed here, or in this interface, which will be typed here. And in this case, again, we restrict the types we can pass to this again method or the class. On the other hand, we extend the range of methods and attributes we can define in these methods or classes. So in such case, we can also use the so-called wildcards, and yeah, so in wildcards we define them as question marks. They represent so-called an unknown type. In this case, again, that should be the type which extends fruit, and then we can actually this is mostly used to pass the collections, because without it, like if we say that this is kind of the type, then the type should be provided, and it's maybe not what's really needed to be used. In this case, it provides us a more flexible way. Like so, in this case, if we just simply do it as before, if we provide the type t, then we should we cannot just simply provide the t, because it will not understand you. So it will ask what is the type of t if you provide. But in this case, you don't need to provide the type of t. You can just simply put any type which extends fruit. So yeah, mostly that's used for such collections, and you don't need to define this template type. Just say something. So the type of the element of the list should be something what extends the class, or this can also be the interface, fruit. So that can also be the outboxing. So that's used for the wrapper class. Again, as you remember, let's do something like this. As you remember, we can only provide the reference types into the use the reference types as the generic types. So in this case, you cannot use primitive types. So, and as you know, for each primitive type in Java we have the corresponding proper class. So this is basically the same primitive type, but the reference type, but the class. So for boolean we have boolean, is the uppercase vector. As you remember, for byte we have byte. For char we have character. For integer, long, short, and double. And so we can skip. Actually, we have no other option. We should skip using primitives in the as the template types, and then we can use the corresponding wrapper classes thanks to Java structure. If we provide the integers or doubles, it will automatically understand that this is it will automatically convert them to the proper classes, so no issues there. Then for static import, this is, as you remember, we used it I guess several times, but I definitely remember that was used in the when we talked about logger classes. So the idea of static import is quite simple. So if we just have simple import of the constants, then it will import the wall class. So the wall class and the attribute. So it's not PI. When we have static import, then it will just import the right variable, or it can also be the constant, like in this case, and then we can just simply use this constant without providing the class name. Then, as you remember, we have also need to make it smaller, unfortunately, and then I will do this way. So I can't remember, let's do it this way. I'll duplicate this one, and let's do it this way. Okay. So this is not better. This is better now, and it should be better as well. Okay. So this is, and yeah, so as you remember, we have also regular expressions. Regular expressions are used almost everywhere in the programming. So if you work with software development, then you most likely face the regular expressions at some point, especially when you work with the somewhere nearby the web development, and it means that you should handle the input from the users, and then you may face some situations when you have to work with the text. You have to search for some string patterns. You have to replace some things, to detect change, also validate. So as you remember, we can use the regular expressions for the validations, and so we can validate if the, let's say, maybe the most from my example, the most usual experience, that's the postal. These are the postal codes, especially if you have in different countries, you may have different postal codes, so you need to use regular expressions to validate them. So the telephone number, the email, and all such things you can do using the regular expressions. And in Java we have remember we have this extra activity using regular expressions. So there we use pattern class, which actually builds the pattern. Then there is the matcher class, which checks if the string matches the pattern. And yeah, if something is wrong, then there will be the exception pattern syntax exception, which means that the pattern is incorrect. So for regular expressions, actually, they may look a little bit crazy. So again, usually don't worry. You should, for the simple regular expressions, they may be like if you search for a single string, then you can just simply use one single string, and this should normally be fine in different cases. But in worst cases, we usually Google some things if we want to clarify what is the actual pattern we are looking for. So again, for some most usual cases, we have just to check if there's digits, if there's no digit, if there's a white space character, non-white space character, word character, word character, and use such patterns, then quantifiers to actually check if something matches 0 or more times, 1 or more times. We can check if there is one or another. And this is also a similar expression we have for if-else condition. Yeah, then something should also match exactly n times, at least n times, and times from n to m. So it means that more than, not less than n, and not more than m times. Yeah, then there's some meta characters. There are characters used for them to escape other symbols, because yeah, maybe one of the most complicated things when you work with strings, when you write strings in the code, is that for different terms, for different languages, you may have some characters which are defined using the specific symbols. So in case you want to use these symbols as the characters, then you should escape them. And yes, sometimes also for the strings, it's not about the regular expressions, but for the strings, sometimes, especially in HTML or JavaScript, you may face such things that, like for example in JavaScript, or not JavaScript, in HTML, when you define the JavaScript inside the HTML code, then the code itself should be written in the double quotation marks. But when you have some text inside these double quotation marks, then you can use single quotation marks. In this case, you can type text inside the block separated using the double quotation marks. So that's also kind of like escape character. And then you can smudge the beginning character except in line, or also some specific cases. Then you can also in Java find the position, so at which position the corresponding pattern starts, at which it ends. If there's when it has the subsequence captured by given group, okay, also the end of subsequence to the last character. Okay. Yeah, also some you can call them study methods, like we simply find a pattern, then with matches, so it means that should match all entire region against the pattern. So looking at, for example, it has to match the input sequence, so starting think of region against pattern. So then calls some replacement methods. For example, as you remember, most times we used replace all, so it just simply replace all the occurrences of the input sequence provided. So replace first. So the same, basically all the methods we can use working with the regular expressions. So as you remember, we should define the pattern class, pattern object, and then we create the pattern string, and then we can use the matcher, for example, to actually to apply this pattern to the text. Yeah. Also, there's the enumeration. That's mostly used for the collections. So when we have the elements from the collection, then we can use the enumeration. So that works pretty much the same as the iterator does. And so just generate series of elements, and yeah, that's mostly used for such collections like vector, stack and hash table. They are thread safe, but they are slower than what we used, and yeah, so Enumeration is mostly used for them. Also, we can use nubs. Yeah, as you remember, we have such structure. It's something similar to the class, and so we can define the kind of static collection of the elements. And it can be the day, they can be the month, and so on. They all run in uppercase, and you can just simply define them as the values and store them, and of course reuse them. Yeah. So as you remember, we can use enums this way. So we can assign some values also for the enums. Like if we have, say, 3 levels, then we can assign the number to each of them, and then we just simply use the value instead of these. And also we basically use them as the constants. So the idea is quite similar to what we see in the constants. Then we can move to Java 6, and starting Java 6 we have annotations. So yeah, unfortunately in this course we haven't had any practical experience with annotation. If we have the time, then maybe we can have some annotations this week. But yeah, let's see if we have time. But basically the idea is that the annotations should not directly affect the behavior of the code, but first of all they're used to explain to compiler, also to us as well. We can actually say explain to the code that to point to some elements. They have such some specific characteristics. For example, if we use, as you remember, if we use override, then it means that the method comes from the superclass or the interface, and we just simply override this method. So we define our own implementation. So we say that this method comes from somewhere else, from the superclass or from the interface. So again, we can actually skip using override, as you know, but we cannot use override for the methods which are not overridden. So this is specific, and yeah, you won't compile your program if you type override for the methods which are just simple methods which do not come from the superclass. But yeah, in fact, you won't see any differences if you don't use override. Yeah, so in this case, it's just for the it's just to show to the developer that this method is only, so it makes more simple for the developers to understand that this method is overridden. So otherwise you can just simply, not simply, but otherwise you would need to check the superclasses if this method appears somewhere there, and of course it will take more time for the developer to actually search for this class, but in case it's overridden, we can be sure that it is actually overridden. Deprecated, Yeah, so we haven't talked about deprecated methods and elements much, but that's quite popular thing in most of the programming languages, not only Java, like in PHP, because I experienced some deprecated methods, and if you work with different frameworks, especially the frameworks which are usually updated, then you may face some elements, methods which which will be it mostly means that they will be deleted in future, and it means that we should not, so they are obsolete and we should not use them. Unfortunately, again, in most of the programming languages, in most of frameworks, you will find some obsolete elements, and yeah, unfortunately, you should face them. We cannot just simply. The problem is that they cannot just simply. Sometimes obsolete methods stay not only in Java, but mostly not in Java, but in other frameworks. They may stay like for years, for for many years, and they will be used, they will be available, but they will stay there. They will stay as obsolete, and unfortunately, they will not be deleted. And this is because there are some legacy program codes where these methods are used, so it is not easy to rewrite all the code. Again, if you use with the large systems, with the large framework, sometimes it's not easy to actually delete this deprecated methods, so we just simply define them as deprecated, and it means that for the new programs, so if you write something new, then you should not use. Yeah, in theory you can use, but you should not use these methods or these attributes. Again, in Java it's about the methods, but it can also be about the attributes. Also in basically about the annotations, and in other languages I faced lots of times such thing like basically it's quite the same as annotations, but maybe in other languages that may be called a little bit different. From my experience, that was called pseudo comments. So what does it mean? It means that at least just talk something from my experience. Actually, in the system I was working with, the large system, that's SAP CRM, and so then there was lots of code written there, and so methods, the classes, the attributes, the function models, and basically lots of stuff there. And in the system there is such feature defined which actually automatically checks the code written. So actually it means that you have, let's say, the object can be the class. I mean, not the technical object as we have the object in the object-oriented programming, but the object as the development object. So it can be the class, it can be the table, database table. So just the object as the physical object. And then there is the check on these objects. And let's say there can be the check on the class. So what does it mean? It means that the program automatically scans the whole code and checks if the code corresponds to the best practices, to the defined standards. If the logic is efficient, if it works well, and so on. Yeah, so there can be different level of issues, like critical issues, the issues with the code. And so basically why I'm talking about it now is because there were some pseudo comments, which actually meant that if you applied so-called pseudo comment, then some parts of some elements of the code will not be checked. So in this case, it's something similar like suppress warnings. It means that the compiler will not suppress the warning on the annotation provided, on the element annotated. And before we move to the break, some simple example, it can be entity, it can be the table. We can also add some parameters to the annotations. So in this case, we say that the object below is table, and it corresponds to the table, and then it can have the name. And so we may also have the ID, which points that the attribute is used as the ID. And so it's something like unique identifier. And then some generated value also can use the in this case, and that's most directed database. So truncation of the value. So that's mostly used for some sources to read your code differently and apply some parameters to this one. But maybe that's more specific. If we have time, then we will go through this practical a little bit later. Just to know that these are the basically you can consider them as special comments, which basically are the comments, but they may also affect your code in some specific cases. Alright, so this is it about Java 6, and after the break we will move to Java 7. So let's continue. And now we go to Java 7, and here we go to support diamond top for generics, try with resources, multi-catch, some implementation changes in some package. So in this case, here as promised, I will move to open document viewer. So yeah, here I can see the presentation. So so right here, as you know, as you already maybe noticed, that when we actually create the object, we can skip using the types on the right side of the definition. Again, I mostly use this approach, but instead of this approach, you can also use diamond operate, and this will also be fine. Yeah, then as you remember, we also have such thing like try with resources. As you remember, unfortunately I cannot let's maybe try this way. Okay, unfortunately I cannot show the full text, but the idea is that we can provide, as you remember, yeah, I showed you once. This it basically means that we can provide the attributes to try element, and basically the problem before we could use it, the problem was, and yeah, sometimes the problem is that the scope of definition of the variable, and for try catches, that's crucial issue. It's quite a comfortable thing for us because again, as you remember, if we define something inside the block, like try catch, that's also the block, and you have the opening and closing tags here, you cannot use it outside the block. So in this case, you should simply define something outside the block, then you can use it inside the block. And yeah, this is sometimes it's maybe not needed. So in this case, you can, yeah, if you want to something catch that won't be available as well, so you can use try with resource, and then this will be available for the try catch statement. Also, one of the things is that you can use the underscores for numbers. So I don't use it much, but it is also possible. You can define just to separate the thousands. You can use underscores. The compiler will understand you. Multi-catch. This is what we also used before. So it means that for one try we can have multiple catch statements. So based on the exception type, it will go to one of the catch blocks. Like if the exception thrown here is exception 1, and it will go to this catch block if the type of the exception is exception 2 or exception 3, and it will go to this block. Yeah. Then there's also such a thing for the file change notification. That's the watch service. So that's just going to watch the file, receive notification when the file is changed. Yeah, also for some other features, again, I cannot expand text here, but okay, at least it's as it is. Yeah, also for the concurrent programming, you can use the Java concurrent package. Then for Java virtual machine, there can be other languages, and that's quite I would say not common languages like Groovy and Ruby. Groovy master Ruby as well for Java and also Python. So these the bytecode of them can be understood by Java virtual machine. And yeah, so the problem is that again, the key difference for such languages like Java and Python, Clojure, or JavaScript, for example, is that Java is static language, so everything is defined statically. For JavaScript and Python, everything is defined dynamically. So basically the type and some characteristics of the objects, they usually may be changed during the execution of the program. So let's say that we have some object A defined and created, and it has the reference. Then let's say at the beginning of the program it has 2 methods, then at the end of the program, in theory, it may have like 5 or 6 or even more methods. And the attributes, so the structure of the objects can be significantly changed during the execution of the program, and that's why we don't call JavaScript as the static language. We call it as the scripting language. So then, we can call it as dynamic language as well. So in such case, invoke the package. Talk about invoke package. Maybe again, if we have time later, I can show you that we can call the methods dynamically using invoke. So basically, there's such possibility in Java that you provide the name of the class or name of the method as the string, and then using just, let's say, the name of the class provided as a string, then the name of the method provided as the string. So using the invoke package, you can call the method in such way when you don't actually provide the class, but you provide the name of the class and name of the method. And maybe not quite widely used, but in other languages which maybe also static languages, there is such possibility to access the classes and the methods using the string values. Yeah, the concept is that like right now you have to access the what's the idea? In Java, to access the attribute or the method of the object or the class, you need to actually have this class, then use, let's say, dot, and call the method which is defined under the class or under the interface, and then you can call it. And otherwise, if you don't have such variable defined, then you can't call this method. Yeah, but if you have something like dynamic stuff, then let's say that you, for example, you may have the variable which is object, and then using the Java's invoke package, but in other languages that can do differently. So you can just simply have the string, and so the name of the method. Again, the string may come from the table, it may come from rarely from the input, but so it may come from different places, and basically just using the type provided as the string or the method provided as the string, you can call it, and then you will have the result. Again, sometimes since this is dynamic, it may trigger some exceptions, some issues. So let's say that you call the method which does not exist in the object you use, and in such case you may face some errors, but usually they can be handled using try catch. Okay, then we move to what's basically this topic is most about, is about lambda expressions and for each. For each is effectively final, and there's some projects, implementation changes. So there's some projects which where the implementation source code is changed. We'll maybe skip them at this point, and maybe let's move to lambda expressions. So basically, what are the lambda expressions? This is relatively new language feature that allows to treat function as the method argument. Basically, I use code as data. In this case, again, before we move to more explanation here, we should practically consider, but remember how the functions are defined in JavaScript. So in JavaScript we can actually, I mean, the syntax is quite similar to what we may have in JavaScript. So in JavaScript we can actually pass the function as the attribute, and so it can also be transportable, and then we used in other places. So something similar is here with lambda expressions. They are used primarily to define the inline implementation or function interface. So mostly with the single method only. And so with one expressions, we can eliminate the element class. Okay, so we'll see it. So basically, how does it work? Like, let's say that we have the method. For Java, we may have some specific types for the method. We maybe not go quite deep there, but the idea is that like in this case, this will work in the way that we process the persons, and there will be the list of the person, and in this case it means that for each person P, like this is the definition for the variable, so this will be the person from from the list, from the collection, and then we basically define what should we do with this person. So let's say that we have the collection of the persons. We call the method process persons, and then it will go through all the persons, and it will pass each person to the variable P. So that's the variable. And so then this variable will be used for the function. So like in this case, first we check if gender is male, then the age is in between 18 and 25, and then it goes. Then it searches for the email address, and then it passes the email to print line, and it actually prints the email provided. I will show you some examples with lambda expressions. So typical use cases for lambda are the anonymous class, that's mostly for GUI listeners. Then for runnable and callable classes, and for comparators. For iterators, we can also, instead of using the iterator, we can use for each method as well. And in this case, this will be used as using the lambda expressions. So we'll have this example. Then there is also such some let's call them returns. It's called SIM type, which is single abstract method. And so if a functional interface, that's the interface that has only one abstract method, and it just simply represents single, say we can call functional contract. It can have other methods with body, but it has just one abstract method. And so we can also consider in the future. And we can use the annotation to actually ensure that that the functional interface is common. Also, there is such pattern like effectively final. So that's quite specifically used for the number expressions, and it means that if we define the variable, and so that's mostly for so-called the body is empty in the classes when we define local variables in supporting calls in context that can only be available to reference if they're final or effectively final. And so I will also show you one of such examples. And it is never assigned to after its initialization. And so in this case you don't need to use final, but that's quite a specific case. I will show you how it works. But first for each that's maybe from my experience most popular usage for lambda expressions. That's for each, and it simply makes the code shorter. Instead of defining conditional variables for the iterator, we can just simply use for each and provide the function which will define what to do with the arguments provided there. So it was so basically it can be used instead of iterator. I will show you. Then is also some reference for the method constructors. So the method reference is used to refer to a static or instance method without invoking it. For constructor, it's similar. It's used to refer to the constructor without actually creating the instance of the name class array type. And in such case, we use double colon marks, and then we actually apply it. I will maybe show you a little bit later. And so there's also such Java time can be used for different stopwatches, for example, for the clocks and nums, and we can basically check more things. But encode, base 64 encoding, from my experience, that's mostly used for the passwords, because usually when we work with the passwords, the passwords are not just some experience. The passwords are not usually stored as a simple text password. They mostly are encoded, and in database they may be stored in the encoding way. So you will not directly see usually you will not directly see the passwords. They in the text way will normally be encoded, and you will not seeing them directly. But okay, let's right now let's open Eclipse and I will show you some examples from the functional programming. So let's open the Eclipse. Okay, hello. Space. Okay. So open it. Right. So let's sort so it's starting. Okay, so we now need to go through some function programming. Okay, so I will my Eclipse will not crash. So this is complete. So back to now. Package. This one. That's it from Eclipse. It's taking from the previous time. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So in case you have some crazy view or lost your previous view, you can just simply press this jaw button. It will get your standard jaw view back then. Okay, so let's create class experiment. Yeah, so we'll start with the let's say for each example, maybe I'll just simply use one method for all the test cases. So let's say functional plus function one. You can just put into one method. Okay. So we'll start with the yeah, we'll start with for each. So as you know, let's define the array. So that will be simple array of, let's say, strings. Let's say names. Here define the array. Just and then add some elements there. So second some names. Define push, and so previously we used the iterator. Yeah, in fact we can also use this approach, and that will also be fine. So we can use this approach. Yeah, for collections, that's also fine. Instead of iterator, and this is fine. And yeah, so using the functional parameter, we can use for each. And in this case, how it works quite similar this way. So we define the variable. This variable will be used as each element, and then we simply provide the variable, and then we should pass it to the function, which then will take this attribute then. So in this case, again, you can see that basically, as you know, system.find has one attribute, so we can simply pass it here. Yeah, we can also keep using the attribute, but in this case, yeah, we define the variable, and we pass the variable to the method. And so again, this view is a little bit strange, but the idea is quite simple. So for each, it goes through all the elements where each element is defined. It's passed to the variable name, and then the variable can be used in the function we define. So in this case, the function is there. The action is system.out.find, so we can use this variable, and this will print the elements. So let's try to see that this works the same way as it worked with iterator. In fact, again, what's the problem maybe here? In this case, we define our separate method here. So if the actions are long, so let's say we want to print. We can use comma, and we cannot really use comma. So let's say that we want to implement multiple actions. In this case, we cannot really do it, but what we can do is, let's say that we can define another method. So let's say that we define action for every element or something like that. and I can pass the name here, and right here I can static yeah. And then I can just define multiple actions here. So let's say I have some maybe some more than one method call. So in this case I can then define another method and pass the name here, and this will work. So in case you want to have multiple actions, then I recommend you to create a separate method and pass the elements there. This will work as well. Yeah. So this is fine, and then let's move on. Yeah, so let's say you want to have some transformations. For example, you have this for loop again, and so for each element you can, and for each element you want to translate the element to uppercase. And a moment, and then to pass them to the function. So first of all, yeah. Some technical issues. So for example, let's say that let's define another list of strings, and it has the uppercase names, and then create new array list here. So first of all, what I do, I add the new elements should be in uppercase to the collection. And then I print it. So to print it, I can go through the uppercase names and print it from here. Another node from here. So I have two loops, and so the same way I can do using different syntax. So yeah, the result will be that all the names are printed in uppercase. So quite simple here, but we can do it differently. So how this would work? The names, I can use the stream method. So this will again go through persons, then we can use map function. And here again I show that the map will be the string. So the element of the map will be the string, then I can use the method from the string. So the method is to uppercase, so it will apply it to to each element. So therefore, fine. For each so yeah, we have string class, then we have the number class. And the function is string. So that's right. With 1 to uppercase. That's correct. Okay, maybe I have some issues with pointer. And so then again, I define the variable. And so yeah, the way previously, so I showed you that you can define separate method. You can also do just define the method this way, and here you can apply multiple actions. So the first action would be that I pass the attributes to the collection of all the elements in uppercase. I have some issues with the pointer. Okay, that's that should be fine. So I add the name, and as the second action, this will be printing. So I will print this name. So what's the so okay, what's the issue here? So I have a map, that's correct. So at this point everything seems to be fine. Function. So we have string, that should be fine. Then for name we apply to the method. Oh, okay. So that should be. Oh no, we should close the statement here. Oh no. Oh no, everything's fine here. So that looks a little bit interesting. So it says that they're going for tab arguments for So we have the string of the strings. We can use function. So here I provide the method which will be applied then to all the elements. Okay, yeah, so the idea is that it yeah, for some reason it does not see the type. Maybe there is the issue with my compiler, because the logic seems to be fine. At least the block's fine. Okay, also have the okay, one moment. No, Java version seems to be fine here. No, that looks. Yeah, I cannot really identify the type. But no, type is correct here. So again, what's the idea here? I have the stream, it means that it will go again through all the strings here. And then I actually map each element to the corresponding element to the uppercase. So in this case, you can see we do not directly call the method to uppercase from each string, from each element, and we just simply apply the mapping. So it means that we map the simple name. So this will be named to the name in uppercase, and the name in uppercase. So that's the method of the class strings. Moment, can the issue here. Oh, what's the typo? Was this correct? So that's the. This point everything seems to be fine. Yeah, so I have string to uppercase. No, that should be fine. And then we have then we just simply use again for each, and we provide it to the method. Oh no, okay. Also, yeah, we provide semicolon. Okay, no, everything's fine. Okay, the compiler is quite crazy, yeah. So just the semicolon here. Yeah, so everything's fine now. Okay, that was quite tricky. Yeah, so never forget the semicolon. It's indeed it's what I usually see from jokes about the programming, that semicolon and the absence of one semicolon may really issue. And yeah, here you can see that everything was fine. So basically, again, at this point, I never shown that I call the method uppercase directly from the name. I just simply apply the mapping. So mapping again means that for each element we will translate it to uppercase. So we apply the function. The function is to uppercase for each element. So we can in theory say to lowercase, then it will apply the function to lowercase for each element. And this will work as well. Yeah, so let's go back. So just and so again, stream goes through all the elements from names. For each element we apply the function we provide here. So in theory the function again you can define a function from string. That the function can also be yes, so we can go to string, then then you can, okay, in this case yeah, okay, in this case you don't have any method, but maybe integer parse integer. Okay, no, that won't. Okay, that won't actually work. Oh no, so let's try it this way. Okay, this way. This will work. Yeah, maybe let's do the following way. I will keep this one. And then let's maybe create an annotation example using the integers. So let's have the list of integers. So no, I'll define them as the text, of course. So I'll define them as the text. A list of the strings. And so then we can have something here. Add some numbers here. So something like this. So then let's say that we have the actual list of integers where we can put only the integers, so we cannot put strings here. So let's say the integers. So let's say that this is the array list of integers. And so we can, again, what's the idea? The idea is that I want to put the elements from the list of strings to the list of integers. Of course, I can convert each string, but each integer to string, or each string to an integer. But as another option, I can use the functional programming. So I apply the function from the class integer. So the function will be to string, and for, oh no, sorry, not to string, but that would be, well, not again correct list of integers, of course. So this is the collection we go through, and so here I provide the method I will apply to each element and the string here for each. Then set the element, and here I will add it to the, this is the name of the variable, so I add the element here, and I can skip printing the name, that's maybe not what we actually want. So in this case I can also skip using the brackets. Yeah, again, if you just have the same as for the loops, if you have one statement, you don't need to use the bracket. So in this case we apply the function parse integer to the element which is string. So basically this is the way how we can make our code shorter. We don't have else. We don't print anything here, but we should not have any issues. Alright, so this is about this example. Yeah, so basically there's this example. Yeah, so using stream method, but we can actually do more. Let's maybe say that, change a little bit here. And let's, for example, filter. We can apply the filter. So let's say that we filter all the numbers which are not even, which are odd. So what we can do in this case, I will use this integers list. So I will use integers. String, and I use filter. So here we need to provide the predicate. So the predicate means the function which will be used to check if the filter, if it goes through the filter or not. So in this case it looks quite similar to what you can usually see in JavaScript. So In this case, we actually provide the function to the as the attribute. Yeah, so this is quite similar concept to what we see in JavaScript. So this was the idea. The idea is simple. We define a function which returns true or false. So yeah, I use the argument. The argument will come from the stream, and I say so filter. Let's say filter all out numbers. So I pass number to the function, and so I do here. I can check module 2. Person 2. So that returns true, false. Yeah, and maybe here let's use for and instructions for each. So print number. So. No, yeah, so everything's fine. Yeah, so I just got it. Yeah, of course, this returns the module. So that returns the number, and the module is number. But if we check that number in the division of 2, it gives 0, that means the number is even. So let's say filter out all numbers. So in this point we will have, so we should have 46, 52, and 16, and other numbers to be skipped. Let's check. Yeah. So that works correctly. So basically, here we can apply the filter. So at this point, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I hope that this should be fine. So I will, so maybe for you, so it's the remaining maybe part of the session. So try to also write, so again, just as the conclusion for the session, for you write, just for yourself, write 3 examples using functional programming. So I use 3 approaches. So the first approach, using for each and apply your function to the element of the collection. Then the second one would be that you map the elements to the function. To the function, and the third one is apply the filter. And so just for yourself, 3 examples where you can actually again, in all the cases you should work with the collections. So in this case I only use twist, but so if we do something the same as the set, then it should work as well. So I mostly use the twist, but for the sets you can also use the same approach. Right, so okay, then just try it yourself with these three approaches, and yeah, this will be the introduction to the functional programming. Okay, so for now that's pretty much it. Until the next session I will define the description for the project. So thanks to you we have the themes now, so that's really good. So we can now know the themes, and also I will give tasks to the teams on Wednesday. Right, so try the functional programming yourself, and yeah, but that's